Landlords are selling. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee. Let's check out this article from realestate.com.au about landlords selling. Now we saw yesterday how the Greens think landlords are just getting in the way, just useless middlemen, and we need to get rid of them all. And well, it's surprising how many people don't appreciate the fact that landlords actually provide a service. Okay, a service. And what surprises me, honestly, is the number of people, maybe I'm just naive in this regards, the number of people that think housing shouldn't be used to make profit. I mean, how else do you incentivize people to do something? They need to make money to do it. No one loves working for free. Some people do it as a charity, fantastic. But there's never going to be enough. You need to, profits are a good thing. They compel people to do things. It's not a bad thing. So, I mean, let me know, guys. Is profit a bad thing? Or do people just not understand? Or is it just people that have never actually, how should I put this, been in a situation where their work is rewarded for additional effort? Maybe all their compensation has been dictated by others and going above and beyond or putting in extra is futile because it's completely regulated. So they don't really understand or have never really experienced it. Could that be what it is? Is that how people can get to that point where they don't think profits are good? You tell me, everyone. Help me learn. So, where landlords are selling up and why. Interest rate rises, land tax increases, and the opportunity to bank big price gains is driving a spike in landlord exits from the property market across Australia. And also just the horror stories of being a landlord too. And it's getting worse in Victoria. Well, there you go. Look, Victoria. Victoria topped the list. Well, look at just the interventions that they're doing in the market in Victoria. They're making it tough to be a landlord. Now, the problem is, if a landlord sells a property that they've been renting out as a way to generate income, if they sell that and then, a couple comes and buys it, fantastic. A young couple gets a home, awesome. But that's one less property that's for rent on the rental market. Maybe the young couple now move out of a rental property into another one so it all evens out. But instead of two rental properties, you've got one less because one's been taken as an occupier. See, this is the thing, and it'll take time, probably 1 to 2 years now, to build the new one if it's a detached dwelling. And it may not be in the right location. So we want to have a stock of investment properties that people can rent out because it just provides more options. You want to be able to chop and change. We all go through periods of our lives when we need to rent somewhere. So Victoria topped the list for the highest share of investment properties sold in July, with latest PropTrack figures revealing 30.1% of sales were properties which have been listed for rent since they were purchased. That's up from 24.7% in July 22 and 16.9% in July 2019 before the pandemic. New South Wales followed at 28%, which, like Victoria, was also the state's highest share of investment home sales since 2018. Ranking third was Queensland, where 27.15% of sales in July were rental properties. Well, is this landlords selling or landlords buying? I'm confused because, they're saying landlords are selling up. So you've got investment properties sold in July with revealing 30.1% of sales were properties which had been listed for rent since they were purchased. So they became investment properties. Were they investment properties beforehand? That's what I want to know. So, McGrath Coburg and Brunswick principal Michael Chan said interest rate rises and planned increases in land tax in Victoria meant many investors could no longer afford an investment property in addition to their principal place of residence. From the 1st of January 2024, Victoria will slash the tax-free threshold for land from $300,000 to $50,000 in an effort to rebalance Victoria's coffers after COVID. Yes, and the Commonwealth Games fiasco. I can't believe Dan Andrews is still so popular. It just shows you how the Conservatives are just dropping the ball in Victoria. It's just nuts. I guess there's so many people that just think, oh, well, it doesn't affect me, it'll affect someone else. Land tax only applies to investment and secondary properties. You know what this is going to mean? It means we're going to start to see the big conglomerates. It'll be like in Europe, where you've got big corporations owning all the properties. It won't be mum and dad investors. Since the introduction of the COVID debt levy, we've witnessed a sudden increase in the number of investors considering offloading investment properties, which will ultimately exacerbate the state's rental stress, he said. These investors have stated a lack of incentives for investors to be a contributing factor, prompting them to reevaluate their options. And I can't say I'm at all surprised. Baby boomers approaching retirement were also reevaluating their options, Mr. Chan said, and were deciding whether or not it was more financially viable to sell their existing investment properties and either reinvest elsewhere or cash up. Jim Cross, principal at McGrath Geelong, says a proportion of long-term investment properties have recently come onto the market. These properties require substantial capital expenditure to bring them up to the new living standards, he said. Some landlords are choosing to capitalize on the equity they hold in those properties by selling them. Investors holding older properties that require maintenance are selling them and then getting back into the market to purchase new properties to access better tax benefits and lower maintenance costs. PropTrack senior economist Paul Ryan says the trend of landlords offloading investment properties emerged at the start of the pandemic. Initially, I think there was a lot of uncertainty about investors' own jobs and uncertainty about borders closing and demand for rental properties, he said. As the pandemic progressed and the rental market got tighter, and obviously home prices increased quite significantly, I think a lot of investors themselves were moving to bigger homes and needed the equity, and prices were up significantly, so it seemed like a good time to sell property. However, during the past few months, there has been a high rate of investor sales, making up a large proportion of market activity, Mr. Ryan said. That may start to signal that there is some emerging financial pressures from higher interest rates, he said, noting loan arrears still remain very low. Yes, loan arrears are still... people are... It's funny, I did a video the other day and I'm getting comments from people telling me I'm a doomer, and the other ones I'm giving people false hope, and it's just funny. Honestly, it really is. The same video can elicit two entirely different responses from people. Households are still spending quite strongly. Really, the big signal for financial stress is around the labour market in terms of having unemployment, and that still remains very, very strong. Yeah, there's going to be a two-speed economy here in Australia. You will see it in the comments. You'll see people who they think everything is like collapsing. We're on the verge of economic ruin. It's all cratering down. And there's others who may be, watching that for their pure entertainment, but are probably doing quite well. How many of you are stressed or worried, or even if there is a recession, you've got enough savings in the bank to keep you going for a long amount of time, you're ahead on your mortgage, you locked it in a low rate and you've got another 2 years before you even need to worry about that. You've got enough work in your business, you're flat out. There's the question. I'm talking to people across all spectrums, from professionals to working class. Everyone's busy. And that's, I'm certain, anecdotal, and a sign of the construction sector here in Brisbane and Queensland. But there you go. That's not going to change. It's not like the federal government isn't pushing the states to compete, to build more. That's just going to create more opportunities, guys. But it also means the arguments people are making that housing will crater don't stack up as much. Data from the ABS on Thursday showed the unemployment rate edged up to 0.2 percentage points to 3.7 in July, with around 172 fewer unemployed people than before the pandemic. Richard Mirosh, LJ Hooker Stafford principal, says in Queensland more investors were now choosing to sell, but the decision is not solely driven by interest rates. Certainly there have been some investors who bought against the backdrop of very low interest rates, and they haven't been able to refinance as the cash rate has gone up, he said. In addition to that, some long-term investors haven't received the legislative change as well, which places limits on the frequency in which landlords can review rents. Some investors just don't like having more rules put on them around how they can operate their investments and are deciding to put their money elsewhere. So the libertarian landlords got in the shits with it. Yeah, I can appreciate that. And hey, here's the thing. You can also get decent interest on your money in the bank now. So for some people, property isn't looking as lucrative. A window of opportunity next year. Buyer's advocate and propertybuyer.com.au Chief Executive Officer Rich Harvey says in Sydney, more investment apartments are currently being listed for sale. They tend to underperform compared to houses, he said. Higher holding costs, interest rates, and pushing people beyond the brink of mortgage stress to significant pain. And I think people are going, is it worthwhile holding this property? However, Mr. Harvey said a short window of opportunity was ahead for property investors. Between September and March next year, it's going to be peak economic pain for a lot of people. But for me, that's the best time to buy, he said. If you're a smart investor and you've got the income and you've got the borrowing capacity, even though interest rates will be higher, they're not that high compared to what they were 10 years ago. We've been used to these really cheap rates for too long, I think. Definitely there'll be some really good opportunities because there'll be more stock and there'll be more motivated vendors. So, what he's saying is we'll see prices decline between September and March next year, at least in this segment. What do you reckon, everyone? And by decline, what is he? Here you go. How much? I don't think it's going to be that 50% you're waiting for, guys. Or what was it? The RBA? Remember, we looked at an article years ago now where the RBA was predicting a 40% fall in property doom, collapsing. That was the media jumping on a worst-case scenario from the RBA running as a simulation. This is the problem. Whenever the media talks about stuff, whenever they put it out there, we get the no interest rate increases until 2024. They don't asterisk the claims they make to provide additional information. It's not an academic piece of work. Even the clearance rates, there's a range in them. No, they never put those out. There are early signs investors are either entering or returning to the market, with ABS data showing new investment property loans picked up for a third straight month in June, although still remain 15% lower year on year. Looking ahead, with interest rates cuts forecast next year, coupled with rising rents, Mr. Ryan expects investors will begin to feel more confident returning to the market in 2024. I think a lot of the uncertainty we had last year about just how high interest rates would go was one of the things that weighed on market activity. And now, while we're seeing interest rates increase, there is much more certainty about where house costs will be later this year and into next year, he said. Housing costs. You know what will be interesting once they do their first cut? Next time we see a cut, how long away do you think it'll be, guys? That'll be interesting. I know they're people waiting. They're waiting. They want to see a cut. I don't think we're ever going to see 0.1% again in our lifetimes. I'll be shocked if we do. But I wouldn't be shocked if we see 3.5. So I think people are pretty confident that while we may not be at the peak of rates, we are close. So if you're a new investor or even a home buyer, you could at least do your numbers and do your budget and see how it stacks up, which compares much better from a certainty perspective than last year when you didn't know where you were going to be in 12 months' time. So there we go. So let's have a bit of a chat about this one, guys. So landlords are getting out of the market. I wonder if it's got more to do with politics than interest rate increases, particularly the talk of rent controls that the Greens are repeating again and again. We'll have to see, guys. I mean, it's a horrific job. No one likes. Well, the media paints landlords as a stereotypical evil rich dude. Well, most of them are just mum and dad investors. Most of them are normal people. A lot of people use it to minimize their tax. It's the Australian way, guys. I wonder if it'll still be as attractive once we get these stage 3 tax cuts in, and you got a big portion of people that are capped at, up to 200 grand a year. They're just paying 30% tax, and you can get decent returns on other investments, not having to deal with all the bullshit. That'll be interesting, but we're not going to see demand decrease anytime soon. I've gone through the pillars of the housing market. Anyway, take care. Have a great day, and I will see you all next time. Bye. Hang on. I do my outro. If you want to check out my other channels, Heiser BIM and Heiser Does It, and I promise I will add some content to that. I'm just flat out at the moment. You can support us on YouTube or Patreon, use our referral links, buy a Pocket Squares, or call me if you need an architect. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.